can do it.
Oh, lost
Look
it.
at that. I planned that the whole time.
I don't think we're going to do that line. Everything's still wet, so we don't have the traction. So we're going to skip that line for now. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Michael with RC Crawling. Today we're doing high clearance links and oil filled shocks. So the links are going to help us underneath the chassis. You can see a lot of flat area there. It can catch you up and make it harder to go over obstacles because your links are in the way. So especially those rear ones, get over the front, and then those back links are hidden. Makes it a little bit harder. So these links have bends in them, makes them high clearance. We'll get into that in a bit. And then the oil-filled shocks are going to be way better than the stock friction damped shocks. So you probably noticed it's kind of bouncy. We'll get that sorted out. It'll articulate nice and smooth after we're done. And yeah, these, we're going to do a trick on the links that a lot of people do. So let's just go ahead and dive into it, and we'll get these thrown on here. I'm getting us ready for installing, come on, focus. Installing these links by taking off the wheels and tires. Just a reminder to do this periodically. You can see that gross hair wrapped around the axle shaft. That'll eventually cause problems. So make sure you're doing maintenance to your rigs regularly. Clean out the gunk that builds up. So I'm going to continue taking wheels and tires off so we can access everything we need, and then we'll get started. I've got the body, wheels, and tires off, and now we're ready to start on the links. Let's just start on the back. They're pretty straightforward. I've got the links laid out. So we've got our upper links for the rear and our lower links for the rear. The bent ones are the lowers. And the way these will be oriented will be with the bend closest to the axle, and the bend will go up when it's right side up, so it's going to give us a little bit more clearance underneath. You can see that our links are going to bend instead of going straight across, so that'll help give us just a little bit more clearance, and every little bit helps. All we need to do is unscrew from our skid plate. So now that link is free. And this unscrews from the axle. So stock link removed. We are going to need to do both links, and the shock is in the way. To get to our upper link, We're doing shocks anyways for this very reason. So I'm just going to go ahead and yank this shock off. I tend to save parts like this. Well, I save it all. You can put together a Franken truck. You can rebuild the truck when you're done upgrading it. You never know when you might need a spare link. So we will need to take our upper link off. It's just easier to get to it when you do them at the same time. And we're just going back in the stock locations. So we are going to take our upper link first. And if you want to pay attention to the orientation so you can see the brand name and the link size, you can do that. I'm going to do that. So we'll do our upper link first, and let's just screw it back into the skid plate. I've just knocked all my screws around somewhere. How do I do this all the time? Where are they? Those are the body screws, those are the lowers. Stuck to my magnets. Oh, first, let's talk about the link ends. So these have O-rings on each side of the bushings inside the links. I am going to remove one of them. Let's take the outer ones off. Yeah, that's going to make it fall out. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to flip this ball joint bushing around. One side is wider, I think. Maybe we can't do that with these links. Yeah, they're held in place. It'll be fine. Typically, one of these flanges has a flange on here, so it's wider. It doesn't go all the way through the link eye. But not on this one. So what I say, we're taking the outside one off. So now we've got one O-ring on, and we're going to place that on towards the inside of the center line of the vehicle. And then we just line it back up. And that's in the wrong spot, if you'll notice. I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. That is for our upper link. Or rather, that's our lower link, which is on the upside right now, since it's upside down. So let's go back to where we're supposed to go for our uppers, and put our upper there. And now we'll get our little bushing put back in. And we're going into, this is where the problem is. So this link end is not completely enclosed, so we're not going to be able to do that trick on this end. We are going to have to have our O-rings on either side, because otherwise your links are going to fall off. I've never used this brand of links before. In Jora's links, you can do this trick with the O-rings on every location. And again, be careful not to over tighten. So there's our upper, says T-Ray, where you can read it if you care about that. Maybe you want to hide it. You don't want to see that. It's your rig, set it up the way you want. So we're going to do this again. We can do this on our upper, no, not upper, lower link. This one is the one that has the bend in it. And this does go in this spot. And then this one is to the axle. Let's see, this one is enclosed, so let's go ahead and remove that outer O-ring. And then we'll talk about why we're doing that. There we go, got that screw to go through and just get it snugged down. And so now you can see, because of the way that link is bent, we're going to have more room for obstacles. You can see behind it, our lower link that's straight, the stock one, fills up that space. So we're going to gain a little bit extra space before we start contacting obstacles. And the reason we're taking one of these O-joints or O-rings off the joints is it just allows a little bit freer movement. You can see how much space that has to move around. You can leave both of them on there and it should work fine. But a lot of people take one O-ring off. It makes it nice and loose, which is good. You want it to be able to articulate easily and freely. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll move on to the front. So I will meet you back here in a jiffy. That didn't take any time at all. There we are, all 4 rear links replaced. It's articulating smoothly. Left the shocks off since we're doing that next. Now we're going to go to the front. So we're going to essentially do the same thing, but the front, you'll notice the stock has this Y-link, and that keeps the left and right sides somewhat bound together and connected. We're switching to a 4-link setup. This will help the front end articulate just a little bit smoother, get a little bit more flex out of the front. And this is only possible, I say only, to my knowledge, this is made possible with an aftermarket servo tray. You may be able to figure out how to do it on the stock servo tray if you want, but I've always changed out the servo tray. So we're going to do the same. We're going to take out our lower link first. See, I'm getting better. I remembered that was the lower. Your knuckle may be in the way, so just move your steering to the side so you can reach this screw head. And this time we're going to go ahead and take all the links off at the same time. And get our steering knuckle out of the way. So there's both lowers taken out. And we're essentially going to go back into the same positions with our new 4 links. So we're not moving anything around. They're just not going to be connected. More advanced builders will start moving their links around. You can alter the camber on your axles. That's especially useful on the front for climbing. You can stretch it a little bit to get your axle to sit underneath the wheel arch of the body that you're going to use if you're doing a custom build. Just allows a little bit more tuning ability. You can play with your anti-dive and anti-squat, which is really just the geometry of your links. So sometimes they'll be moved up here, and with aftermarket chassis, it gives you more tuning ability. These stock chassis don't really have that ability. So this is what we took out, kind of like a wishbone. It's a 3-link. We're going to upgrade that to a 4-link. So we're going to do our upper links first. It's our straight links. Now that we're doing high clearance links, that's an easy way to differentiate. And I'm going to just start by putting it in the skid plate first. And let's do our O-ring trick. Since this side will be completely enclosed, we can do that. Sometimes lining these up is the most difficult part. There we go. So I'll get that upper fixed. I'm going to use shorter screws instead of that long screw that went all the way through. See if that's not long enough. Well, maybe we will use this. Yeah, I've got plenty of screws. I'm just going to start taking screws and using them where they fit and grab from my spares. This link set did come with screws. Any brand you buy will probably come with screws, so don't fret if you don't have extra screws yet. So that just goes into the servo tray on the outside now. So this is right above your front drive shaft. The back of that servo tray, where that nestled in between in there. Let's see if I can get a good shot of what's going on. So you can see where we're screwed into. Our Y-link went in the center of that, but now we're screwing on either side onto the rear of that servo tray. Our drive shaft came undone, which is expected, so we'll just make sure we've got it phased, which we do not. Now we're phased again. Screws are pointing the same way. So we'll get our other side upper put on, and then we'll move on to the lowers. I'm going to do this off camera because you don't need to see me do the same thing twice. I'll be right back. Just like that, got that thrown on there. Now we're going to do our lower links. Again, the bend is going to go towards the axle and it's going to go upwards when it's flipped up. So it's going to give us more clearance underneath the chassis and our links when we're out on the rocks. We're going to pull our O-rings off because these are enclosed. This screw is actually too long. Let's see what they sent us. We'll just borrow. We'll just use one of these. That one looks like the right length. Yep. I forget that these don't stay in. Every other brand I've used, which is, I guess, just Injora. This is some cheapo. I bought them because of the color. They match the body really well. And I'm all about color coordinating on these little trucks. And then our lower link back into the skid plate. So now you can see what I mean by a 4-link. 4-link, 4-link. That's good. I'm going to throw this other one on there and let's talk shocks. Before we go on to shock talk with RC crawling, maybe that's a new series. This is how I organize my links, wrap them in tape and write what they are. So if you're digging around and you need to find a specific link, you know what you've got. That's just how I do it. Somebody else may have a better way to do it. Let's take a look at these shocks real quick. See what we've got in the package. So, obviously 4 shocks. These are 39 millimeters. They are going to give us more travel. You see that our line up the bottom of these shocks. Our new ones are much longer. And collapsed, they are also a little taller. So our tires aren't going to come up as high when they're fully collapsed, which will help eliminate some body rub. But we're also going to be able to drop our tires a little bit further, so it's going to give us a little bit more flex out of our little C10. This thing here, this threaded collar, is called the preload adjustment. So your spring normally is not compressed. If you want to, you can compress it so it's already got a load, so it's preloaded. That's where that term comes from. And the reason you would do this is if you find that the spring is too soft, before you switch to one of these stiffer springs that they include in the package, try adjusting your preload, as that will stiffen up your spring a little bit. We could talk about Hooke's Law and all that, but who needs to know about that? Just drive it and see how it feels. If it feels too soft, tighten that collar down, add some preload, and that'll give you a little stiffer shock. If you find that you're all the way down, you've screwed this all the way down, and it's still feeling too soft, that's when you switch springs. You go all the way back up, add the stiffer spring, and then adjust from there if needed. Before we put these together, so we'll have our bushings. We have some more O-rings. You're going to have more O-rings than you'd ever wanted out of life when you get into this hobby. And these little things are spacers. We may need those. Typically you run spacers on the top, so when you're flexing, your shock doesn't contact the chassis. You can bump it out a little bit so you get nice smooth articulation. We'll see if that's necessary. But before we do that, we are going to disassemble our shocks. And these come apart in several ways. This end unscrews. So you want to make sure that's screwed on there good. Not too tight, but you want it to stay together. And because these are oil-filled shocks, there's a little cap, and inside you can see the bottom of our shaft that goes inside this shock body has holes in it. There's a little bit of oil from the factory, and what that oil does is just slows the compression and rebound of this shock. Whereas our friction damped shocks, they just fly back into place. When this is all assembled, it's not so fast, and even with it taken apart, you can see it doesn't rebound as quickly. That's going to make our driving a lot smoother. I always just clean out the oil that it came in. We don't know how much it is. They're often not the same. Sometimes they leak out. So I just go ahead and start all the way over. I use Team Losi Racing shock oil. I bought it before I knew anything about anything. I went with 40 weight because it goes from like 5 to 90, and I figured 40 is the middle. That's probably good. This is probably heavier than most people use on their small crawlers. I make up for that by just using a tiny bit. So I still get the dampening that I want. And I can just keep using this giant bottle of oil. And what I found works is just a little tiny syringe with no needle, of course. I'm going to do each of these shocks with 0.1 milliliters of oil. So very little oil. So I'm going to go ahead and draw up at 0.4. So we're ready for all of our shocks. This is much easier than trying to dribble a precise amount from this opening into that shock. So from our syringe, it just slides right in there, and we're going to put in 0.1 milliliters. Your crawler is going to behave better if it's predictable, and this is one way to make it predictable, is to get your shocks all functioning the same. So now that we've got our oil in there, we want to work it a couple times. Press our shock all the way compressed, and then we're going to screw this top on. So now we've got an oil-filled shock. This is not a heavy body, it's a Lexan body. On my heavier body crawlers, like the Beetle, I'm using the 40 millimeter big bore shocks with quite a bit more oil in them to make them stiffer, to help offset the effect of that big body lumbering around on the rocks. Since we're just using this little light Lexan body, we don't need a whole lot of dampening. So now, nice smooth rebound compared to the stock. It's just bam, right back. So I'm going to fill up the rest of the shocks, and then we'll get them mounted onto the truck. I'm working on the last shock, and I figured I might as well show the whole shock. We went over most of it. I've already taken this end off, opened the cap. Because these are oil filled, it has this bottom cap. And this can cause binding sometimes if it's too tight. But it has this little plastic washer, I guess, kind of seal. And then when you push our shaft all the way out, you can see that head allows the oil to go through these little notches, and that's what slows the shock down, so we get a nice smooth rebound. So that's the whole shock. Your oil can leak out from the bottom, so it's good to check every once in a while that you've not lost all your oil. Make sure I get this assembled correctly so I don't lose all my oil. Now I lost a tiny O-ring because I was not paying attention. That O-ring is going to be important. I'm going to put this back together off camera. This O-ring goes on this plastic piece to help seal it. I'm going to put this back together and then we'll put the shocks on the truck. Shocks are all put together now. This is our baggie of parts. We've got several different size spacers. You may need to use those. You're just going to have to put it together and see if it looks like when you flex, the shock body is contacting the chassis rail. If so, put a spacer on the top. We've got these ball bushings, and this one actually does have a flange on one side. You can see that side is wider than that side. So that's the side we're going to have on the outside, so it doesn't push through. And I'm going to put one O-ring on the back to hold it on there. So that's what we'll screw through. We'll do the same thing on the bottom. This is much nicer. It doesn't fall out. That's good design. That's why I use Injora. People will complain about anything. They complain about these parts breaking. Like, yeah, they're not indestructible. They're tiny. Work on driving better. We'll just throw one on the front here. So it'll mount here and there. We're going to throw a spacer on the top. But first, let's just go ahead and mount the bottom, get it on the axle. So we're going to be going through the side that does not have the O-ring. Just like so. And just needs to be snug. And I'm going to use the thickest spacer on the top, which will need a longer screw. And your spacer will go on the back side of your shock. So put the screw through, then put the spacer on. And now we're ready to screw it on. And just like that, a new shock. So you can see that spacer pushes the top of the shock away from the chassis rail. It'll give it room to move and flex. So that's why we're using that spacer. because otherwise it'll bind and not move freely. I think you got the idea from that one. I'm going to complete the rest, and then I think we should probably hit the rocks. All right, everything's all back together. Because these shocks are taller, everything's riding higher. You can see how much more room we have under our wheel wells. I think I'm going to switch back to the stock springs because I liked that ride height. So I'm just going to, at a later time, pull the springs that came with these shocks off and put the springs that came on the stock shocks on these shocks. So the spring's going to be shorter and the body's going to sit lower. So it'll be a partial droop setup. You could run full droop with no springs. That means you're always sitting as low as you can. And you can see then we don't compress as far. But if you like the big lifted truck look, go for it. It's going to make your center of gravity higher. It's going to make your side hilling worse. But it looks cool. And these are not all about chasing top performance, hitting the best lines. It's about having fun with it. There's no wrong way to do it if you're having fun. So don't listen to the haters online and the critics that say, oh, it's too tall, it's going to be terrible, you're going to hate it. Maybe not. Maybe that's exactly what you want. And don't be that guy online. Somebody did an upgrade, say, hey, you did something awesome. And then if you want to suggest something, they could take that or not. It looks cool. I love the red shock showing through. Love that our links pretty closely match our body. So I say we go hit the rocks now. Before we hit the rocks, I wanted to talk about the shocks, where we left off. The ride height was really tall, and it's actually been a few days since I recorded that. It rained all weekend, so I was testing and tuning on the indoor course. And let me spin you around and we'll talk about... Hopefully that traffic noise isn't too loud. Got it sitting lower, and what I did was moved the shocks back to the stock mounting locations. I actually used the springs that came with it because the stock springs were too narrow, but I trimmed them to stock length and went ahead and threaded down the preload collar just to hold the spring in place so it's not wobbling back and forth. I don't think that makes a huge difference, but I tried it and it seemed to perform a little bit better. Before I made these changes, the truck was too tall and tipped back super easy, of course rolled over on its side. So that's been sorted out. So let's get some run footage and see how she's doing. Those shocks and links helped a lot. The shocks got that body roll quieted down. We're not bouncing all over the rocks. Helps make crawling more predictable, so you know when you put your tire somewhere it's going to stay there rather than bouncing around and you're going to lose your line. The links, hope you could see that we had a little bit better clearance, especially going over those sharp cornered or sharp edged obstacles. So good upgrades. It does still need more weight up front. Our next video, I think we'll fix that. We've got some brass diff covers, and we're going to open up the diffs, of course, and we're going to put in rear underdrive. So that's going to help with a couple things. It'll help keep us planted, keep that front end down. We probably won't put the brass diff cover on the rear. Typically you want a 60-40 weight bias towards the front. But the underdrive is going to help us with turning, so it's going to tighten up our turning radius since the rear wheels will be spinning 33% slower than the front. So that's going to help keep us planted going up hills. Those front tires are going to grab and pull us, and the rear tires are just going to be dragged behind us. So that's almost like a little bit of a dig function on these 24 scales. After that, we're going to do, what are we going to do? Oh yeah, we're going to do brass knuckles. We're going to swap the axle shafts, and we're going to do a steering angle mod. I've never tried it. It's well tested. Lots of people do it. And then after that, I've got a little surprise. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen some posts about this. We're going to do a chassis swap. This is a prototype chassis. It will be available soon, $35 for 3D printed, and about July 4th, aluminum versions will be available. If you want to purchase the chassis, Psycho_D_RC, I'll put a link in the description. Message him on Instagram and he can get you hooked up. Thanks for watching. Hope this was enjoyable. Hope it was fun. Hope you learned something. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. How are the upgrades going? What would you like to see? What would you do different? And make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video. I hope to see you again soon.